Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of the Housing Signal. I'm Abe Alasov. My co-host Joe Galvin isn't able to make it tonight. He's traveling, but tonight we have a very special guest. Seng is the director of operations at Bob.ai. Is the person who takes AI from housing off the slide deck and turns it into something an agency runs on a Tuesday morning. Welcome to the show.
Awesome, Abe. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Well, we'll hop right into it. So, when your seat is the operations seat, which means you live in the gap between what AI promises in this space and what it takes to make it work on the ground. So, let me start here. What is that gap and what does it really take to close it inside a housing authority?
Well, Abe, it's pretty wide at the moment, I'd say. There's so much going on in terms of what's happening, not just within AI, but also with housing authorities and what's happening at HUD. So I come with a little bit of background from the PHA side. I worked at, the Houston Housing Authority right after Hurricane Katrina. So issuing vouchers to, thousands of people in a stadium, kind of doing like criminal background checks in this like giant row of computers, right? So what I'm trying to do 15 years later is figure out how to do this stuff online. Like, how do we take a giant stadium full of people, issue the voucher using a virtual voucher briefing, right? How do we try to take RFTAs that are being dropped off in offices and putting that on your mobile phone, making sure that landlords can just create an RFTA using the mobile app? Things like that in terms of making sure that the solution that we're providing is actually meeting housing, like the housing authorities need, essentially.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I know like in my days in PHA in Battle Creek, I mean, just 80 to 90% of the work was just data entry, trying to disseminate data, making sure you had the social security number right. A lot of things that kind of just hampered what our asset managers could be doing elsewhere to help residents and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everyone I worked with in Houston, Dallas, New York, like a lot of them had a bachelor's in social work, a master's in social work, right? And there are people who were trained to, definitely figure out what the greatest need was to make this person successful in life, or like, just to make sure that they had food on the table. How did they get from here at work to working at a better place? Or,
Hmm.
doing like workforce development things, or figuring out daycare, therapy, all these other things. And what they're doing is rent calculation. What they're doing is looking up websites for rent comp. And you're like, what are you doing with your life? Like, this is not like the skill set of the people at housing authorities are not being met with like the actual need. Like, they should be doing all of those things, right? Helping people with family self-sufficiency, doing workforce development, figuring out like you should live in this high opportunity area so that your kid could go to a better school. And what we have them doing is actually like, is this rent under 40%? Like, should we negotiate with
Exactly.
the landlord on this other stuff? And there are so many things that not just AI, but just like pure like computing logic. What you said about the social security numbers, like making sure that the social security number is matching what is on the actual social security card, not what they, like some people will spell their names slightly differently on a social security card versus what they're putting on their application. So what we do at Bob AI is like we're catching that stuff. We're extracting that data. We're making sure that, hey, does this match? Are you sure this is like how you spell your name? And
Hmm.
updating that for you, right? So taking that data entry, that manual work out of what you actually have, what you should be doing,
Hmm.
and just that's I think where AI kind of is the most helpful, is taking these like high value interactions where it's just like making sure that this validation is there and just making sure that it's consistent so that people can take a look at doing more high value interactions, like doing the easy, making sure that this data is entered correctly, date of birth is correct, name is spelled correctly.
Allowing people to be people as opposed to machines.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
so
Or
I'll hop into
calculators.
yeah, yeah. The next question here. I want to get specific because you have results that stops people in their tracks. Bob AI helped Dallas take its inspection wait from 15 days down to one, and that pulled tens of thousands of units into Section 8. Walk us through exactly how that happened operationally, and just as important, what it unlocked for families and the landlords on the other end of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think DHA was losing so many landlords because they were waiting, I think, somewhere between like 15 to 45 days for the initial inspection after the request for tenancy approval was approved. Yeah. So when Troy Broussard from DHA approached Bijoy Narayana, our founder and CEO, he was like, "Can you help me with this? Like, can you solve this?" And not only were able to optimize inspections because DHA covers like 7 different jurisdictions and counties, and optimizing that that inspection just means making sure that you're routing to the right place, using a lot of the same algorithms that, Uber or Lyft or somebody would use to kind of map inspectors to like where they live. So when we map them on their way home, like they usually have like a setting where the inspector can take the car home. So we would map them within those 7 counties and then provided them with enough data to compress the inspections. Like instead of going from, all right, you're going to work on quadrant, the northeast quadrant, you're going to do the northwest quadrant, and scheduling it that way, we were able to get it to where we took all of the annual inspections and just interspersed the initials. And then we took it a step further where we were like, well, actually, we didn't do it. Pandemic did it. So we were able to get them to do the scheduling within one day, and they're like, whoa, 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 we need a minimum of 3 days before we could do this because we need to confirm all these things. And we're like, that's fine. We can like push it to 3 days. And then the pandemic happened and they're like, well, we can't do any inspections. So like, yeah, you can. We'll do it like virtually. We'll use Zoom. We'll use, I think we were using Google Duo at the time because they had Samsungs. So we were doing, yeah, we just kind of did it online, created that interface so that you could just use a temperature gun, GFCI, people could still move, even though most housing authorities were just at a complete halt at that point where like you you're going to self-certify it and like an initial inspection. You can't do that. So yeah, we're just trying to figure out like creative solutions to help the PHAs figure out what their specific and unique problems are, right? Like we have an actual ERP platform that to do everything from A to Z in terms of what a housing authority needs. But what our like really niche sort of solution does is you give us the problem, we'll help you figure out what the best solution would be for that set.
Yeah, that's great from what I've heard about you all and seen the interactions you're able to customize, which is really good, especially in this day and age. And this will kind of get back into like kind of some of the issues I had facing when I worked in PHAs. So housing authorities are careful by nature. They are regulated, they're accountable to their residents and to the staff. And the staff has seen the technology come and go. So from operations seat, how do you earn the trust of an agency's people to let AI touch something as sensitive as eligibility or paperwork or an inspection without feeling like the technology is there to replace their judgment?
Right? Is that we're using the biggest misconception about AI is like we're using this within housing to replace actual expertise, like actual expertise of a housing caseworker, anyone who's in compliance, anyone who's an inspector that's moving to Inspire, right? In reality, like the most valuable applications today within not just like Bob.ai, but just like all applications in general are just helping professionals who are already doing their job process information faster, right? Like as long as you can respond more consistently to each of these different responses, they can then spend more time on what we talked about earlier, like those high value interactions of like making sure this person who is experiencing domestic violence or VAWA find a safe place to live, right? So what we're trying to do when we're looking at these things is not replace anyone because there's so much work at a housing authority to be done, right? Like
Just
just
like the
because
waiting
we're
list.
using logic to help you calculate the 40% faster or to run the rent comps using the rent comparability using, an API, we're not trying to replace the actual caseworker. What we're trying to do is get them to do these other things, these other tasks that PHAs have so much to do. Like I worked in the housing industry for like over 15 years, right? So working with people who have to input the same data over and over, running 6 different websites to figure out what these comps are, and just spending their time on these like very tedious things. And I was like, what if you could just spend your time talking to someone and actually figuring out what their actual need is? And I think housing authorities are never trying to, have this giant reduction in force. Nobody ever wants that. Is HUD forcing us to do that sometimes? Yeah, because of the funding levels are not exactly where they should be, right? But that's not where AI comes in. We're not robots trying to take your jobs, right? What we're trying to do is make sure that you can work faster and that you can work more consistently and that everyone's applying the payment standards consistently, like doing the rate calc consistently, that your RFTA, the utilities on your RFTA are always going to match your HAP. Like that's what we're focused on.
It's huge.
So we get that a lot. Like usually when I do a demo with a housing authority, the first thing is like the executives are always on board. They're like, yeah, let's do it. And then you have staff that are on the call that are like, how are you doing that? And that's always the question in the back of their mind. And that's the part that I kind of want to convey as much as possible is like with DHA, not a single inspector was replaced because of our optimization. Did they
That's good.
retire? Yeah. They may not have been they may not have rehired that position because of, we didn't need one person to like do all the scheduling because Bob was like scheduling for them and whatnot. But it's not because, they were let go because of that. They just retired, and that's different, right? I think that's different in terms of like staff
It is.
augmentation and like the way that you can like, instead of having 6 case managers running rent reasonableness, can you have one that's like the expert at like QAing the rent reasonableness that the bot or like the API is like throwing out, and then having the other 5 work on additional QA, like actually scheduling your QA and making sure that the same inspection results that are constantly like the same initial inspections that are constantly failing because utilities aren't on or like something else is like doing outreach for that, doing more landlord workshops to say, I used to be an inspector and let me tell you the top 5 reasons a unit fails, right? Like that's just a different way to kind of look at outreach that could be done, other jobs that can be created because you're utilizing AI to get that information out to your stakeholders, like your
Yeah.
landlords, your tenants and whatnot.
Kind of to your beginning part of that question, when we had a Section 8 officer that was getting ready to retire, 30 some years of experience, a wealth of knowledge, and we just didn't have anybody trained up to take over her spot. And my suggestion was, well, let's try to have some sort of AI solution here that can handle this, and then that will allow the rest of the staff to absorb it with little to no change in what they do daily. And I think that's where a lot of kind of what you're getting at, a lot of housing authorities could do. It's through attrition. No one's losing their jobs, but some people just aren't being replaced.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that happens across the board, right? With our compliance with Inspire, a lot of folks were not particularly trained on it, right? What we're doing is making suggestions, like we're inputting all of the, Inspire trainings, all of the wealth of information that HUD has available. And we're we're making a recommendation on what the failed should look like whether it's life threatening or not. And we're telling you based off of your picture and based off of what you added as what the defect was, exactly what code of Inspire it should be, or that we think it is. And you can, a human can always override that. A human can always approve that piece of it, but we're going to give you that suggestion so that you don't have to like call through this wealth of information on a new topic that you may not even be familiar with or may not have been trained on. And as an inspector, you can go out there and actually do an inspection, put in your information that you're normally doing, and be like, all right, cool. It's that electricity hazard. It's like LT2 or whatever that is.
Uh-huh. Great. So 2 more questions here, Win. So there's a real and fair concern in this field that AI can introduce or amplify bias in who gets housing. How do you and Bob.ai keep this technology fair and transparent so that it widens access rather than quietly narrowing it?
Well, we're not doing anything on the AI side that actually uses anything that's based off of bias, right? We're what it's reading, a lot of it's on the landlord side anyway, like a lot of it's on rental adjustments, request for tenancy approval. We're reading management agreements to make sure that that 20-page document doesn't have to be read by a case manager to make sure that this person has the ability to receive payments on behalf of the owner. Things like that. Like we're doing rate calculation when it comes to check stubs. So whether or not your check stub is clear and we can read it versus one that's not, doesn't really introduce any bias. I mean, a lot of the reason why I got into coding to begin with was exactly that. It was if AI is being completed all by the same demographic, which, traditionally is in English, like everyone who speaks English. I think like North America in general has a huge influx of that, right? AI is like only being trained in mostly English, regardless of who is developing it, wherever that team is. But also by that demographic of white males, right? Like a lot of it is, this is who is the most educated and is looking at engineering in that way, or who's like trained to do that. So that's why I got into coding to begin with. But in addition to that bias, like the clientele that we're serving is so broad. Like we're looking at, PHAs across the country. You're not looking at, some of our customers are 1,000 in ACC units, and we've got 20,000 in ACC units. So you've got a huge, wide swath of folks where I'm like, wow, people can make that much money and still be on the program. That's really cool that we're not like taking assets into like that much assets into account. Like where a working family actually has the ability to utilize the program for family self-sufficiency and also someone who's zero income, right? I think it's great when we have like MTW agencies that are working towards that as well. But when we look at the bias, what we're also doing is we're creating smaller language models for
Hmm.
each PHA. So if you're utilizing our customer contact center, for example, we're training that model off of just your admin plan, not everyone else's admin plan, just yours, right? We're still using all of the HUD literature, like PIH notices, just to make sure that it's compliant and whatnot. But we're taking your standard operating procedures. We're not using all like DHA's standard operating procedures for everything because it's not going to apply. So we're kind of making it much smaller and much more. It's catering and it goes to that customization part, right? Where we're not just using ChatGPT models or Anthropic's model. We're taking that as like a baseline and then including our own sort of secret sauce or like different things that we're adding to it and making sure that that's available and that you're not creating any like hallucinations based off of other information that is being skewed. So yeah, from what I can see now, I mean, who knows what this is going to be in 4 years or 4 months actually, but from what I can see right now, not a ton of bias going in with AI, like nothing that we're approving one person over another on a wait list because their name looks this way or yeah, like we're still going off of your preferences. We're still going off of your, preference configurations, whatever your preference points are, date and time.
Well, it's great that you all can basically customize to each specific PHA based on their admin plan. That's awesome, and I think once we send this out, I think a lot more people are going to know about it and have an idea of how they can customize AI specifically for their PHA. And this kind of gets into kind of sort of like you started talking about timelines. This last question gets into this. So the last one here, look out 3 to 5 years. What does a fully modernized housing authority look like operationally? And what is the one piece you think agencies are still underestimating about how to get there?
That's such a great question. 3 to 5 years. I mean, I think a lot of what we modeled, I mean, a lot of what my modeling of what I think it's going to look like or should look like. I think NYCHA, when I worked at NYCHA, they had so many bells and whistles, right? I mean, this is a housing authority that has the budget to customize everything, to kind of have everything be done for you. I mean, within, not to kind of like go through our product roadmap entirely, but I think 3 to 5 years from now, we're looking at AI call centers that are actually doing recertifications, like that are interviewing families
Hmm.
through voice, through like folks who can't in multiple languages. Okay. Like
That's
our
cool.
contact center, you call it and you're like, I don't speak Spanish or like, you know, habla español, and it'll talk to you in Spanish, right? Like it just reverts quickly. So you're already getting some like automatic translation, which any agency with limited English proficiency that's like 6 to 10 languages is going to just swoon over because you're like, well, I can't believe you could do this in 2 seconds. I don't have to call a language line. I don't have to do this other thing. But taking that to the next step is we're going to call families and make sure that their recertifications can be done. A family can call in. We'll actually take that information that they're requesting a change in income, get it from them, send them a link that says, drop your information off with this code, etc. Right? I think a lot of housing authorities right now are so focused on. Some of them are still really scared. Some of them like are frightened. I get it. It's frightening. It's frightening how good AI can be. I'm terrified of it. In my personal experience, I'm kind of like, okay, how do I embrace this better? Like, how do I embrace this responsibly? Right? Like, I get it. Like, I'm definitely in the exact same boat. But I think what other housing authorities or like what other folks are going to have to get used to is the same way that, you call American Airlines and they're like, here's my virtual assistant, right? That's going to get better. Like it's annoying, but
Hmm.
it's going to get better. And then you're going to not even notice it, right? Like the way that the natural language processing within AI right now is so good. It's going to be tricky. What I think we could do with it is everything, unfortunately. Yeah, I think there's going to be so much of like, can you process this recertification? I think a lot of housing authorities are just going to be QA in the future. Like you're going to be able to complete most of those things, and then the part that I want it to get faster at is pressing that button and actually being able to get to a human and say, I actually want to do this a different way, and having the agencies have the capacity to do that because we're doing
Hmm.
all this other stuff for them. Right. Yeah. Being like right now, I think when we started the request for tenancy approval, I don't think there was another software company that was doing it for at least another 2 years, right? So with the RFTAs that we had done, now we're doing rental adjustments, we're doing, all these different things that relocations that are being tracked, through a system that a lot of things are still doing. People are still doing it on spreadsheets. I had a meeting today with someone who was doing like portability billing all
Hmm.
on a spreadsheet that they were trying to figure out. And I was like, oh, if you just upload that, we can like send you this thing. We could follow up with this housing authority. Like we're like trying to like expand the possibilities of like what can actually be done. Because at some point we're just going to end up refining like what we're doing, trying to refine it to make sure that, these gaps that are there are less noticeable and like less, like you're not seeing the delay as much. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what it's going to look like in 5 years. I mean, I think this industry, we move slow. Like we like focus on the humans. We focus so much more on the customers and the people that we're serving, and we should move slow, right? I think a lot of that is necessary to make sure that we're covering it correctly and that we're answering the right questions. Like, yeah, AI could do a lot of this stuff, but should we have it do this stuff? I think that's the bigger question is like, should we have it do? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, part of me is like really excited about where it can go, and the other part of me is like,
Yeah, yeah. That's where I think like in with like the PHAs that are quick and nimble, I think they're going to be able to get to the point where they're able to spend more time on people as opposed to less just by getting rid of the minutia of data entry, collecting
yeah,
documents, reaching out. And that's the part about AI that excites me because I just know how long I've seen asset managers on the phone and they're frustrated, the residents frustrated. It's a 30-minute conversation, and a lot of this could be boiled down to what's the problem, what's the pain point, and how can we correct it, and then getting that asset manager to then to be able to help that resident do more than just provide some documentation.
yeah. I think the hard part for us is like trying to know, like every agency is so different. Every agency is going to have a totally different set of pain points. So when we build a solution for one agency, it doesn't always work for the next, right? Regardless of whether you're all on the same platform. So when we do that, we want to make sure that as we build out these, AI models, we're building so many different AI agents that are handling, your MRR reports, your, all of these things within Inspire. We're doing all of these different contact services. We're doing AI leasing. We're doing all kinds of things that we really want to focus on which agents are going to solve the problem or like help with those specific pain points faster. And that's going to be a couple of different agents at one time, right? And understanding each agency's pain point is going to be a little bit trickier and like having to customize that for that specific agency. But I think the more agents we're building, the more models that we're kind of using, the better our tool is going to get as well. It's going to be a lot more intuitive, a little bit like faster at answering things that are coming through. But that's also just working with really smart people at PHAs that are like, hey, how about you try this? Or like, can you answer this question? And then the second we help, solve one agency, we take that wealth of knowledge to the next agency that we're helping with as well.
Well, Wen, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. And
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me on the show. Can't wait to hear it. And really excited to see what you and Joe do out there.